Mike Owens here. Today I'm joined by Cody Brundage. 5 weeks ago we were in his hotel room in Austin, Texas. Now we're over Zoom. But Cody's got another fight coming up, UFC 300, facing Bo Nickal. Cody, great to sit down and chat. How are things with you today?
Yeah, brother. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Obviously, as we mentioned, a little bit of a quick turnaround from the Zach Reese fight straight into another fight camp. What was your first reaction to the offer of not only the Bo Nickal fight, but also to fight on the historic 300?
So it was funny. I told my wife like the day before I got the call, I was like, you know who I'm gonna fight next? She's like, who? I'm like, I'm fighting Bo Nickal at 300. And then obviously like manifested it, and it worked out. Coach called me the next day. He's like, hey, I got an offer for you, Bo Nickal at 300, and it was a fight previously that we had kind of talked about, and I told him, I'm down to take this fight. I feel like Bo is super untested, kind of similar to Zach Reese. We talked about that with him. He's just a little untested. I feel like I'm very well rounded. I come from a wrestling background. Obviously, I'm not as high level a wrestler as Bo Nickal, but it doesn't necessarily mean that much when it's an MMA fight. So I like the matchup. Being on 300 is awesome. And every fight I had, like my last three fights have all been like 4 weeks or less notice. And for this camp, I have like 3 months. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And then also something like I got to manage, right? Like I don't want to like burn myself out over a 12-week camp when I'm used to doing 4-week ones. So just trying to work on making sure I don't burn myself out, but it's good to have time for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. You mentioned the Zach Reese name. I did want to ask about that because obviously there's maybe some more hype on Bo's name than there was on Zach's, but there was nevertheless hype. There's virtually similar records. I think 100% finish rate never coming out the first round. How similar are those actual situations when what we discussed in Austin?
I would say like there are a lot of similarities. I think Bo has obviously like some higher pedigree in terms of competing. He's a multiple time NCAA champion. He's competed on the world stage in wrestling. He's been on Contender Series a couple times. So there's some similarities in terms of like a guy who's kind of run through everybody. He's never been cracked, never really been in a real fight, never had real adversity. And for me, I feel like those are good things because that's a position I can put him in. And he's foreign to that, just like Zach Reese was. But he definitely brings some things to the table that Zach didn't necessarily possess. So there's some differences in the matchup, but definitely some similarities in terms of I'm the best guy this guy's ever fought. It's not even close. It's a big step up in competition. They were trying to book him against Tresean Gore. That was going to be the matchup, right? And then Tresean fell out, and he fought that guy on short notice. But I finished Tresean Gore in one round, so it's a huge step up in competition from where he has been. So yeah, some similarities, some differences, but there's definitely in terms of experience, it's the same fight.
Look, there's a lot of hype on Bo's name. He's come in as being touted as this super prospect coming in. Do you feel like there's added opportunity in this fight in terms of you can get the Bo Nickal scalp on your name that will do good things for your career?
I mean, it's definitely a launching pad, right? But at the same time, I know how MMA is. I know how the fans are. Right now, Bo Nickal's the next champ. He's the next big thing. But if he loses to me, it's not going to be like Cody Brundage is the next champ. Cody Brundage is the next big thing. It's going to be like maybe Bo Nickal wasn't as good as we thought. Like, it'll still do good things for me. Definitely brings some more prestige to my name a little bit. But in terms of am I going to take what Bo has? Probably not. Right, like I can be realistic with myself about that. It'll take a few more wins, maybe a few more prospects I have to knock off, but it definitely starts to build my rep a little bit for sure.
Look, you are talking to an Englishman here, Cody. So when people talk about collegiate wrestling records, it does kind of go over my head. I think you had about
Yeah.
127 and 22 records or something like that. And I do hear these initials NCAA bandied around with Bo's name. Can you just give me an understanding of this hype around Bo? Is it warranted in the wrestling world? Give me your assessment of that.
Yeah, I think it's warranted. We've never really had. There's very few NCAA national champions that go into uh, MMA already, right? Most of them are going to compete in the Olympics or try to chase that dream a little bit. So you have few of them, and then he's a three-time one, so that's even more like prestigious. He won the Hodge Trophy, which is, I guess, like what's the award that the footballers win in England, like for the best player of the year? That's
The
what he won.
Ballon d'Or, it's called.
Yeah, so he basically won that for. So yeah, it's definitely warranted. He probably should have been a four-time national champ, like to people that are close to the wrestling world, which means he would have won every year he was in college. He went to Penn State, which is like a powerhouse, right? Like it's the Premier League of NCAA wrestling. So he warrants the clout and the hype he has for sure. I just don't think he's ever been tested, right? Like we don't know where he's at, and I think that's exciting for me. Like I get a guy who has like a UFC champion level hype around his name, right? Like he has as much hype as some champs, and he does not have the skills, right? Or we don't know if he has the skills, but I would be hard pressed to think in 2 years he's picked up the skills. Like obviously a very good wrestler, but even when I watch his fights, the blending of his wrestling isn't really that impressive to me, right? Like when you watch his fight with Val Woodburn stuffs his shots, right? Like until he gets clipped hard, he's stopping the takedowns. I don't think Val's like an accomplished wrestler, and it said for like NCAA wrestling doesn't always translate to MMA. And I think he's still trying to figure it out. So I'm catching him at a good time in his career when he hasn't figured it out. And, I'm 10 fights deep in the UFC almost. So I think it's good for me.
Yeah, no, 100%. We talked about this in Austin as well, but once again, an underdog coming out with the initial odds coming out. I think I checked your record. 9 fights in the UFC, 8 of them you've been being the underdog. So this is a position you seem to find yourself in for one reason or another. Does that change your mentality going in? Is there something when you look at it and go, the bookmakers are doubting me, maybe the fans are doubting me? Does that change your mentality over the next 3 or 4 months in camp?
I just think it's more fun for me because I feel like the only fight I was a favorite in, I lost in the UFC. So I have a winning record as an underdog in the UFC, and I think it makes sense, right? Like I still don't think I've really shown my full potential in a fight. So that's part of the reason the odds are what they are. Part of it is Bo is such a big prospect, but it doesn't really change my mentality because I'm kind of used to that role. But it gets me excited, right? It makes the story even better. If it was even odds and I go beat him, I'd be like, well, he could have won, right? Like we were saying he could win 50-50, but no one's expecting me to win this fight, and kind of like the last one, no one really expected me to win that fight. And when you go and do that, I feel like it makes the story that much better, right? So I'm excited for that.
What do you anticipate the crowd reaction to be at UFC 300?
I mean, I have a banger walkout song, so people kind of forget that they don't like me when the song comes on. But I mean, I'm sure he'll be the crowd favorite. He's a big name. People are expecting big things out of him. If you listen to the media, he's the second coming of Jesus Christ, basically, in MMA. So I'm sure he's going to get a loud pop, but, that's also not too much different than the rest of my career. So I'm not too worried about it.
100%. Does it mean something extra to you to be fighting on a historic card? I mean, there's going to be a lot of hype. Presumably, there's going to be a big main card and probably some title fights at the top. Does it mean a lot to fight on such a historic card?
Yeah, I think it's super cool, right? Like you're a part of history, and I remember where I was when UFC 200 happened, and to be a part of that card. I know I've made no mistake. I know why I'm on the card, right? I'm on the card because I'm fighting Bo Nickal, right? He's not on the card because he's fighting Cody Brundage. So I'm in a great spot to kind of one, get a huge upset and do it on a huge platform with everybody watching. But I saw a lot of people kind of being like, yeah, the only reason Cody Brundage is on this card is because of Bo Nickal. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, like no shit. But am I supposed to be upset about that? Am I supposed to be like, man, you're right, I don't deserve to be on this card? Like, no, I deserve to be on the card. I'm a matchup that makes sense for Bo Nickal at this point in his career. And I'm coming off a big win. So I feel like that's why I put myself in a position to get this fight. So I'm excited for that.
Does little bit of a technical difficulty there, courtesy of Cody's dad. But Cody, we were talking a little bit about fighting on UFC 300. Is there any added stakes going into this fight? I mean, as you mentioned, you've got the matchup with the highly touted prospect. Is there anything? Do you feel what do you feel like is on the line in this fight?
I feel like it's all positive things for me, right? Like I feel like some of my last few fights, my job's been on the line. I don't necessarily feel that with this fight. I mean, your job's always on the line with the UFC. But coming off a big win, this will be the second fight on my new contract. I don't really feel like my job's on the line. I feel like all the things that are on the line are positive, right? Like it's a good launching pad for me to kind of really put my name out there and make a stake that I deserve to be here. And not only that, but I'm a prospect as well. And I think all those things are good things for me, right? It's a chance for me to, on the biggest stage, right? The biggest stage of the biggest stage, UFC 300, to really have a performance that I'm like, okay, I'm reaching my potential, right? I kind of did that in my last fight, turning the corner a little bit, and to fully turn the corner on that stage, I feel like is huge for my career moving forward and my confidence. And I'm excited for it, man. I really am. I think, I'm gonna catch a lot of shit for this, but I don't think the fight is going to be easy by any means, but I really, really, truly believe I'm going to make it look easy.
100%. We've talked. There's been a lot of rumors about who could potentially be the main event of UFC 300. I'm not sure if you have any inside info, but if you had to guess right now, you had to give me a guess. Who would you think is the main event of your card?
I saw Leon said he's going to be on the card. I can't imagine they would do Leon Bilal as the headliner for 300. I mean, honestly, out of all the matchups I've seen like floated around, I don't even know if this is a real one, but Aspinall Pereira to me would maybe be like the most entertaining and attractive. I think Aspinall will run through him, but I feel like just because people are so heavy behind Pereira, him going for his third title in 3 different weight classes on a historic card, it kind of makes sense. So that would be the main event I would like to see. I don't really think any of these super fights are really going to happen. I thought for a minute it was going to be like Connor, Nate Diaz 3 or something like that, but doesn't look like that's going to be what takes place. So maybe Aspinall Pereira, and then another, then Leon Bilal, and then maybe a girl title fight, women's title fight on that card as well. I think 3 title fights. If they're not going to have like a crazy super fight, I think 3 title fights will probably make that pay-per-view.
And obviously, I couldn't get you on without getting your thoughts on the title that's on the line in your division in 2 weeks' time with Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. A lot of controversy, a lot of people fighting in the stands, but ultimately, who do you think walks out with the belt at 297?
Have like a grinder pressure fight style. The only thing that I feel like Sean gets it done just because, I know Dricus is like, oh, I can breathe 297% oxygen or whatever he says now since his surgery, but he's shown to have some pretty not great cardio in the past. And Sean Strickland, I feel like he eats guys like that. If you can't push at a hard pace or keep his pace, you kind of saw it in the Abus fight. Like he was losing that fight, but it was just a matter of time until he kind of took over and then dominated. And I could see a similar thing happen in the Dricus fight.